Hi everyone. We're going to talk today about three different actions: contour, flatten, and slice. And let's start out with contour. So what contour is it's an action that allows you to eliminate cut lines in something. Now that really doesn't make a lot of sense. However, saying that you're going to fill in an item makes a little more sense, but I'll explain the cut line part to you. So take for instance her bun here. If I wanted to fill in her bun so it was just completely black and it didn't have all these lines in it, when I very first started out, I would take a shape and I would put it over whatever I wanted to fill in, and I would put it all over it, and then I would weld just to fill it in. So I would use whatever, fit in here, and I would fill it up with shapes, and then I would weld to make it solid. Well, you don't have to do that. Contour will allow you to fill in an item just like that. So the reason that removing cut lines is used because if you remember what the bun looked like, it had the circle, and then it had all the little pieces that kind of looked out like the hair in there. Well, the machine was going to cut all those hairs and the inside of the outline of the bun and everything. So by filling it in, we remove the cut lines that the machine was going to follow to cut the details that were in her bun. So that's why we say that it removes cut lines. But another good way to think about it is it's a way to fill things in or to hide things that you don't want cut. So if we were to, let's bring her bun back. One of the things that some people get confused about is if you didn't want this bun on here at all, if you just wanted her head to stop right here and you didn't want the bun, you're not going to be able to do that with contour because this line is attached to this line, which of course is attached to everything else. It's just one big outline except for, her eyes and such. So if we were going to try to contour her bun out so the bun isn't there any longer, that's not going to work because it's attached to everything else. I'm going to show you what it's going to look like if you did try to do that. You would select the outside of her bun, but then that didn't help us. So what that did was it got rid of the cut line around it, but it also got rid of all the other outline, which was a cut line. So since that line was attached to all the rest of the lines, you're not going to be able to contour that out. So if you have done something like this and, well, let me go back. Here, let me do it back to the way that it was. Oops, that's not what I want. There we go. So that's not going to work because it's attached. So if, let's say, her pockets right here are the same, if you can see, they're attached to the rest of her shorts right there. So you're not going to be able to get rid of those pockets since it's attached to all the other cut lines. However, this girl's pockets you can get rid of because they are not attached. So instead of just filling something in, you can use contour to hide images or pieces of the image. So now her pockets are gone. You just cannot contour something that's attached to everything else. So you would be able to contour their mouths, but you would not be able to contour this eye out because, as you can see, it's connected to all of this. So you're not going to be able to do that. In order to contour, it has to be separate pieces. If you're trying to hide it, if you're trying to fill, like if we want to make her hair black, if you're trying to fill in, then it will work. So we filled it in. But if you're actually trying to hide cut lines, like her mouth, it has to be an individual piece. It cannot be attached to the rest of the image or any of the other any of the image that you want to keep. So contour is really handy for a lot of different reasons, and it's a little hard to wrap your mind around sometimes. I still have to think about it and think, okay, wait, this is how I want it, but this is attached, and what I do is usually just click away and see what it gets me. So what I was going to say before was, if you had hidden all of these contours, you can hide and unhide them all at the same time. So if we show all the contours or hide, so this is hiding all the contours, so there's just one big cut line now. And then you can go back and you can show all the contours. So that's handy. On the iOS app, you're not able to hide all and show all. You have to do it individually, piece by piece. And like this image, for instance, has a bunch of pieces. So if you wanted to hide all of it and then just bring back, let's see where we are. Okay. If I wanted to hide all the contours and then I wanted to bring back her mouth only, then that's what we could do, or not individually. You could do it all at one time and then bring back the one thing that you want to cut. So it's really handy to be able to hide all the contours and show them all instead of having to do it piece by piece. So that's contour. So let's talk about slicing. So slicing is used to cut away pieces of an image, or maybe hole punch. Think hole punch, like what a hole punch would do if you had it in real life, obviously cutting away paper. So if you wanted this star to cut out of the center of this circle, you would lay them over each other, you would select them, and then you would slice. So then you would have, this is our original star we put over, and this is the cutout piece. And usually these pieces get deleted, obviously. In this case, you just have stars, so if you wanted to use them, then you can also do that. But slice is to get rid of pieces that you don't want, or to quote-unquote hole punch stuff, anything like that you wanted to how you wanted to manipulate your image. Let's say we wanted that, okay, let's make it back a circle and use contour. So you would click on the piece you wanted to fill in, and then now we have a circle again. So let's say you wanted that circle cut in half. Not sure if this is half or not. We're going to pretend. So we would take a square or a similar shape, we would put it over our circle, and then we would slice. So now we have a half a piece. So we have all these individual pieces that can either get deleted or kept depending on your project, but that is what slice is for. So the thing you have to remember about slice, though, is you can only slice 2 layers at a time. So we could only slice the square and the circle. You can't slice a square, a circle, and a star at the same time. So let me go back and I will show you. You can only have 2 highlighted at the same, 2 highlighted at the same time to be able to slice. So if I was to take all of these pieces, so that's going to be 4 pieces, which is 4 layers, you're not going to be able to slice. As you can see here, it's grayed out. So you can only slice 2 layers at a time. Now, if you wanted to slice all of these at the same time, let's say for instance, let me see where he falls. So let's say, for instance, we wanted to cut 2 stars out of this square. So I'm going up here and going to arrange and bringing them to the front just so I can see them. So let's say that we wanted to slice 2 stars out of this square. Well, that's going to be 3 layers, and we're not going to be able to do that. So if you highlight them all 3 of them, slice is grayed out. So the 2 ways to do this is to select the square and 1 star. So I'm on a Mac, and with a Mac, you select something, hold down Command, and select the next thing, and it will highlight both of them at the same time. You can also do it over here. So you can select a square, hold down Command, and then the star. I'm not sure what it would be on a Windows computer. I'm not familiar with Windows computers, so I think it might be Control, but I'm not 100% on that. So you can either select the square and the star and slice, and then select the square and this star and slice. Of course, that's a lot of steps. So another way you could do this was you could select both of the stars, go down to combine and then weld. And that's going to put the stars on the one layer. So now we have one layer here, and then we have the square as our second layer. And now we're able to slice it all at one time because we welded these stars on into the same layer. So there's our original stars, there's our cutaway piece, and this is what we're left with. So that's the two ways that you can get around the two layers. You can either do it all individually, but if you had, say, 15 stars in here, you wouldn't want to slice them all individually. You would want to select all of the stars. Let me show you how you would do that. So if you were, go back one more. If you have 15 stars in here and you wanted to select them all, you can just take this square and you can hide it. And then you would be able to draw your box around all your 15 stars. And then you would be able to weld them together without that box being in the way. And then you're going to bring back the square. And so you have one layer, two layer, and you would be able to slice. If you move this circle into the mix and highlight it and try to slice, it's not going to let you because there's too many layers. So only 2 layers at a time for slicing, and you are able to use weld to combine layers into one to be able to slice it out of your shape or whatever you're using. So let's just leave that there. So flatten is our last action. Now flatten is used for print and cut projects. So if you have this cute little kitty, he's set to basic cut right now, as you can see. All of him is basic cut. So you do not have to, lost my train of thought. You do not have to change everything to print and cut before you flatten. You don't have to do that because flattening automatically changes everything to print and cut. So you don't have to change his ears or, highlight all of him and then change to print and cut. If you're flattening will change it to print and cut automatically. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to worry about individually changing everything to print and cut. So when I flatten, let's go back and unflatten. So all of these pieces are all going to be on separate layers. So I have 6 different layers here. So if we were to accidentally highlight and only attach, it's going to turn one color because it's going to the same mat. But if this was all the original, if it was all orange to begin with and you were to attach, then you would send this to your printer and it would print, but your machine is going to cut all of these interior cuts here that you see. All the black lines are going to be cut if you have only attached. So that is not what we want to do. We want to flatten. And when you attach, they stay individual layers also. And we want them all flattened into one layer to print and cut. So we would highlight the whole thing. We would go down to flatten. And then we're on one layer and we're good to go for print and cut. I'll show you what it looks like. The black box around it here is going to be the registration mark. That is what the machine is going to read, so it knows where to cut. But since it's been flattened, it's only going to cut around this outside shape here. It's not going to cut any of these interior pieces. This is all going to be printed on your home printer, and then it will cut around the outside. Had we attached this rather than flattening, then all of these interior pieces would have gotten cut, and that's not what we want. So we use flatten for print and cut to turn multiple layers into one, and it also tells the machine to only cut around the outside. So in this instance, your Cricut machine doesn't care a thing about these eyes and the word kitty or anything like that. The only thing your machine sees is this outside cut right here. So you don't have to worry about it cutting anything inside as long as it's been flattened. Now, if you have, say, a word like this, and you want to print and cut, I brought back too much stuff. If you wanted to print and cut this word and you didn't have this kitty, but let's group him and let's hide him. Okay, so if you had this word that you wanted to print and cut, it doesn't have to be flattened, and as a matter of fact, it can't be flattened because it's only one layer. So you're not going to be able to flatten that. Well, looky there, I just flattened it. That must be new. That's crazy. I'm trying to, now my mind is boggled. I'll have to do a new video on that, I guess. So you don't have to flatten it to anything because there's nothing to flatten it to. So if you were to print and cut this as is, it's going to print on your computer or on your printer, and then your machine is going to cut around every single letter. So what you need to do to prevent that is you're going to have a solid shape behind it. So it needs to be flattened to a solid shape. So let's take this out a little bit. We're going to send it backwards. So let's say you want a sticker just like this. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to select everything, and then you're going to have to flatten. So now the outline disappeared because it was white, the same as my background. Let me just change that real quick so you can see it. So here's our sticker. So you're going to send it to your printer. It's going to print the word kitty, and then your machine is only going to cut around this square. So when you're doing print and cut, if you don't want all the individual pieces to be cut, it's going to have to be flattened to a solid shape. So a lot of people, I'm going to go over a video on offset here not too long. So, oh my gosh. Let me see how far back I got to go. There we go. So a lot of people like to use offset instead of, say, a square or a circle. So what you would do, you would go to offset. You would make it as big as you wanted or as small as you wanted around it. So this is so when your machine cuts it, it's not going to cut right around the letters, but it's still going to give you a little bit of a border around it. So as is now, if we were to highlight it all and flatten it, your machine is going to cut in between as well. So it's going to cut all this, it's going to cut up into here, it's going to cut everywhere around the white you see. So what we like to do in that case, if you wanted it a full piece around it, you're going to make your offset bigger. So let's say I don't want it quite that big. So let's say I want it about that big, but I still have these random places in here. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go down to contour, select it, go to, where are we? Oh, I'm not sure what's happening here. Oh, I know, I'm sorry. It needs to be just a cut layer. I had already flattened it, so that's why it was like that. So just make sure your offset when you first set it is a cut layer if you need to contour it. So you would go down to contour, and then you would click in all these little holes, and it's going to fill up the holes. And now you have a solid piece that you can highlight and flatten. So to use contour, let's go back to that since I wasn't aware that I had changed it from cut to print and cut. When you normally add an offset, it's going to be a cut by default. But if you have already flattened it and I was undoing backwards, it just remained a print and cut. It needs to be a cut operation for you to be able to use contour. So that's what happened there. I didn't realize that I didn't undo it all the way back. And so the offset was still a print and cut layer, and it needs to be a basic cut layer to be able to use contour. So, oh, and you can also go to contour, like I was saying, and do hide all contours. I just realized that I clicked them all individually. Of course, there was only 3. But if you had a bunch of those little holes, you would want to hit just hide all contours. And then you would select all, you would flatten. and then it's going to go. You're not seeing the white because it's just blending with the background. But this is our registration box, and then our machine is just going to cut right around where we had that white offset rather than cutting these individual letters. So if you're doing a print and cut like this, especially with lettering, you're going to want to flatten it to a solid shape behind it, so not everything gets cut out individually. So I hope that helps. I'm sure that I talked too fast for some. So if you have any questions or anything that you didn't understand, just let me know and I will get back with you in the comments. Thanks, guys.